Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland is out today. Any person who has watched this show probably more than once over the past 20 years knows how excited I must be today to talk to the former commissioner of Social Security, also, of course, former governor of Maryland and former mayor of Baltimore, Martin O'Malley. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Hey, thank you. Good to be with you.
Let's start with, just backing up. I mean, give folks a sense. Social Security started in 1936, and essentially we had at that time somewhere between 70% and 90% of our seniors were living in poverty. Today, that number is 10%. And those are people who, more often than not, will have just not earned enough over the course of their careers under Social Security to be kept out of poverty. Today, it keeps nearly 40% of our seniors out of poverty.
That's right.
And obviously, if you go up to 133%, 140% of poverty, and it also keeps people my age from having to bail out their parents in Social Security. So just give us a sense of like of the staffing over the years. I mean, in the administration of Social Security, what has the history of that been like?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, Sam, Social Security is the most successful and impactful anti-poverty program that the United States has ever enacted. It is for 90 years without missing a monthly payment. Social Security has not only lifted all of those seniors out of poverty, but also it's one of the most impactful programs for lifting children out of poverty, because there's survivor benefits and there's all sorts of people who we've seen in the public arena who have been beneficiaries of that. Richie Neal, Tim Walz. So Social Security, I was asked to go to Social Security not because it was doing well, but because...
Paul Ryan, too, I should say.
Paul Ryan? I did not know that. I was just in Racine, Wisconsin, speaking of Paul Ryan, for a town hall on Social Security. So I was asked to go to Social Security by the Biden administration, by President Biden, not because Social Security was doing well, but because they were struggling. Over the last 9 years, Congress, particularly House Republicans, had reduced Social Security staffing to a 50-year low, even as baby boomers like me swelled the ranks of their beneficiary customers to a new all-time high every day. And so if you think about it like an insurance company, all of their customer-facing metrics were headed in the wrong way in terms of timeliness. The wait time on the telephone, and when you call the 800 number, the wait time if you apply for retirement benefits to get into pay status, the wait time largest ever in terms of the disability insurance aspect of the program. That was signed into law by Dwight Eisenhower. If you're injured on the job, you can apply for insurance. So you get insured by working the requisite quarters, not only against, living out your golden years in poverty, but also if, you are unable to work because of an accident on the job or something like that. So all of those things were heading in the wrong direction. And the reason they was because of the reductions in staffing. So with a new, what we might call agile for government regimen that we called Security Stat, those folks at Social Security, nonetheless, were able to sprint up that downward moving escalator and get everything moving in a better direction until the election happened. And now Elon Musk, with a chainsaw, has been going after this agency, already has reduced by 7,000 people. I think they were at, when I left after the election, they were at about 55,000. So they have already cut 7,000, paying them our money, by the way, Sam, paying them with our money to quit and get out. Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. And I think they're going to go down to 10,000. They're going to get rid of even more than that. And as a result, all of the service metrics are going in the wrong direction again. You're seeing intermittent outages on their website and the other systems that sit atop that old COBOL green screen data system that has your earnings and mine since our first job. And ultimately, this is going to cascade. And I do believe that we're headed for a system collapse at Social Security, and that will involve the interruption of benefits. I don't know for how long, and I hope I'm wrong. But it hasn't happened in 90 years, but they're headed to make it happen now.
I want to talk about the end game. Donald Trump has said that he doesn't want to touch Social Security, but I think it's probably more accurate to say he doesn't want to be blamed for touching Social Security. Let's talk about its solvency, because it seems to me it's a two-pronged attack, right? On one hand, you got Elon Musk out there saying stuff like it's a Ponzi scheme. This, of course, is something that we've heard from Republicans for literally 90 years, from the day after it was instituted. The first, I think, 1936 Republican platform was against Social Security.
Right.
And the latest thing is it's just not going to be there, et cetera, et cetera. This is, we've been talking about this. Well, 20 years ago, George W. Bush is in the Treasury going like, it's just IOUs, it's just paper, it doesn't mean anything. Talk to us about the 1983 deal, Greenspan and Reagan, and the anticipation of where we are now, the trust fund and the challenges, not on a operational level, but in terms of a funding level going forward.
Yeah, there's a number of big lies that these guys have been spewing. As you pointed out, Sam, some of them are as old as the program itself. A couple of the big lies are it's a Ponzi scheme and it's going bankrupt. The other big lie is it's never ever worked. So let me parse both of those. One person on a cable news show said to me when she heard me say that, look, we're headed to a system collapse in the next 90 days. She said, oh, we've been hearing that forever about Social Security going bankrupt. And it's still, they always say that and it's never happened. Let's separate the two things for a second. And then I'll, go to the heart of your question on the solvency thing. There is a very real and imminent threat right now of system collapse because they have cut in half the number of people that keep their IT systems going. This is an agency that is all staffing, people helping people, and all IT systems. And when you exit people that used to maintain those systems and understand how they're built, connected, architected, if you will, if you want to use that tech verb, old cars have to be maintained, and old computer systems have to be maintained. They've just shown 50% of the people that used to do that out the door. So that's a very real imminent threat. And if you're somebody for whom that check is the only difference between you living with dignity or you living under a bridge, that's a big deal. In addition to the big lies that illegal immigrants get Social Security, which they don't, they're prohibited by law, or the big lie that dead people are stealing our checks. There's 20 million of them. Simply not true. Let's unpack a little bit this solvency thing and bankruptcy thing. Social Security operates on a 75-year forecast. I don't operate on a 75-year forecast. Sam, I'm guessing you don't operate on a 75-year forecast, but Social Security does. And periodically, Congress has to make an adjustment in order to keep it on that 75-year forecast. So that's what happened. Back in 1983, Congress made certain adjustments to the program because they saw that baby boomers of my generation, whose parents came home from World War II and had a lot of kids, were going to be coming to retirement age, and they needed to build up a surplus reserve that would be large enough to cover the retirement lifespan of us baby boomers. And so that's what they did. When we hear people say Social Security is going to go bankrupt in 2035, that's not actually what they mean. It gets a lot of clickbait. Lots of people want to read those stories. But what they're actually talking about is that surplus reserve, which is going to be depleted sooner than they thought back in 1983. And the reason for that is because of income inequality. In other words, changes that happened to the tax code after 1983 that moved more of the earned income in America for the next 40 years into the hands of the super wealthy in our country and out of the range that Social Security it's out of the bracket, if you will, that would have those dollars pay into Social Security. In other words,
in 1983, it was 90% of the nation's income was touched by the Social Security tax, and today
correct.
It's closer to 84%.
Correct. And that difference, very well, if you've done your homework, that difference is why it's being depleted 15 years earlier than they had thought. Totally solvable problem. Not unlike the customer service crisis they're creating. That too is a solvable problem. And most people are surprised. I was just with a number of Democratic senators earlier this morning, and most people are surprised, as I've done these town halls, to realize that you only pay into Social Security on the first 170,000 of your income. And that's probably because most of the people coming to these town halls don't make a lot more
exactly.
than 170,000. So as a practical matter, that means that somebody that's a bus driver or a school teacher or works at McDonald's pays all through the year. Whereas somebody like Warren Buffett or Elon Musk only pay for like 2 seconds after the ball drops on New Year's in Times Square, and they're done. So that's why Democrats like John Larson from Connecticut, Sheldon Whitehouse in the Senate, have introduced bills with a lot of co-sponsors that say we should take that cap off of Social Security for the highest earners. Where do you reinstitute, or where does that start? 400,000. President Biden would indicate. Others have said 500,000. Some have said 250,000. Whatever it is, most Americans believe it's not fair and it's not right that there should be this kind of high earner windfall on Social Security when we don't have that when it comes to Medicare. There's no point where you stop paying into Medicare on every dollar earned above whatever it is.
Just to be clear, so if I'm making about $170,000 a year, I'm paying about $10,000 in Social Security tax. If I'm making $17 million a year, I'm paying $10,000 into Social Security tax. And that's
much better way of saying it than I said it. And I've been through a lot more town halls on this than you have.
Well, feel free to take that. Feel free to
very good
to use that. So you've addressed the dead people. You've addressed the fact that there's folks who are 150 years old collecting Social Security. Trump has moved, I think it was just yesterday, maybe it was reported today, to essentially dissolve the Social Security Advisory Board.
Right.
And I know this is late breaking, but could you tell us like the relevance of that? Because that was an important, it seems to me, and it's a bipartisan board,
right.
But it seems to me that
Senate
it's
confirmed too. Senate
what's
confirmed.
That? Mm-hmm. Senate confirmed. And it's certainly back when there was this fight to privatize Social Security under George Bush in 2005, that board was, it didn't play a huge role, but it played enough of a role for people to understand and to basically provide some information as to, there's a lot of talk here. And to be clear, at that time they were saying, the trust fund's going to run out in 2032. We're in a dire straits here. And like you've explained, trust fund runs out. We're still going to get 83% of our benefits. It's just a matter of lifting that cap and getting back to a consistent amount of the nation's income that's touched by Social Security tax.
Right.
But what do you make of that board? Like, it seems to me these are all moves to sort of like till the ground, as it were, for actual cuts to Social Security or a privatization scheme.
Yeah, they seem to be. They're very intent on wiping out the umpires, the referees of the game, if you will, that can call balls and strikes on solutions, things that are solutions, things that are not solutions, things that are a real problem in terms of the operation of the agencies, and things that are just outright falsehoods. So I think this is the latest in a succession. On day 2 in office, he did away with all of the inspectors general for every agency and department in the United States, including Social Security, the largest domestic program and the only one that actually runs a surplus of $2.6 trillion. Once they put their own puppet commissioner in charge of Social Security, that was President's Weekend. He was a guy 5 down in the hierarchy there, who was actually put on administrative leave pending an investigation into illegally sharing our personal data with the
This is
Doge team.
Dudek, is that his name?
Dudek, that is his name. And so in his first short week on the job, because it was after President's Week, he only had 4 days, industrious guy that he is, he did away with a division called the Division of Analytics, Oversight, and Review. These are the people that safeguard program integrity, that guard against improper payments, that examine 50% of all of the allowances in terms of disability. And now you have this, and at the same time, they're unleashing all of these false fraud claims. The zombie apocalypse, illegal immigrants, the scandal that non-citizens who enter the country illegally should get Social Security cards, even though Elon Musk himself got one because it's required by law if you enter legally. And
we make billions off of that, right?
Yeah.
And we make billions off of that because a lot of those people don't end up collecting Social Security. They just pay in.
Correct. In fact, in terms of the so-called illegal immigrants, they pay in $25 billion a year that they'll never see a dime of. So this latest bit with doing away with the advisory board, which has its own staff, by the way, and frequently does, I guess you would call them audits, studies, looks at how the program is operating, and gives its own independent, bipartisan sort of, focus lens on aspects of the program that need to be addressed, fixed, shorn up, whatever it might be. So this is part of the ongoing pattern of these guys. They are if there are no people to call balls and strikes, then the truth can be anything they assert that it is. And so I think that's why they want to do away with the advisory board. It's a mistake. They shouldn't do it. It served the agency and the people of the United States well. But this is who they are. They're trying to get rid of anybody that can be an independent arbiter and call falsehoods for what they are and assert the truth.
Let's talk about the contention that Musk had that there's a fraud and waste in the agency. The improper payments, you mentioned that. My understanding is that about 2/3 of improper payments, which still represent a tiny 0.0 something percentage of payments, are clawed back. And I think any business that anybody operates, to have that type of minimized loss people would be bragging about it. But just give us an overview of that.
Yeah, sure. The year after year, the Inspector General audits, as well as we have our own. Social Security also has an outside auditor that we rotate. I still say we. That's rotated every 4 years. So when I was there, it was Ernst & Young, I think in their second year. Prior to that, it was Grant Thornton. So year after year, not only the internal, before they did away with that Department of Analytics, Review, and Oversight, but our own internal audits, as well as the Inspector General, as well as those big accounting firms, found that Social Security is actually very, very accurate, that the error rate was around 1%, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. And when we say error, we don't mean just fraud, we mean the improper payments. So Social Security has to calculate, in order to get the right amount to the right person at the right time. That's 73 million calculations that you have to make. And sometimes, especially if somebody is in a position where, say, you apply at the age of 62 for benefits and you want to continue to work, there is an offset if you earn too much. And so that can create situations of overpayments. There are also times when we make mistakes and the agency makes an overpayment, and we have to, according to Congress, do our level best to reclaim that overpayment. There are also underpayments where we fail to pay people as much as they're owed. That happens most commonly in SSI, supplemental security income. But to your question about the fraud, the incidence of fraud at Social Security is less than 0.5%. It is a very, very small amount. Elon Musk said famously in one of his courageous interviews that he did with Fox News, he said that 40% of everybody who calls Social Security is a fraudster getting through on the 800 number to steal your direct deposit information. And it goes on all day and all night, and everybody sees it and nobody does everything about it. Total, complete lie. The incidence of people calling that 800 number who are successful fraudsters is actually 1 out of every 3,100, which means 0.00032. So the notion that Social Security is rife with fraud, zombie apocalypse, dead people, doesn't happen. I mean, we get automatically alerted we have contracts with the 50 states and the territories. So whenever there's a death certificate that's recorded, we get notified of that right away. You know what else we do, Sam? Ever since like 10 years ago, if somebody stops billing Medicare and they're over a certain age, that's an alert to us that, maybe a miracle happened, but maybe it's something else that's happened and there's a delay in us getting that death certificate. And when the Inspector General looked at that notion of dead people getting checks, they found roughly like 800 a year, and usually we catch up with the death within a month or two. So Social Security, let me kind of talk a little bit also, Sam, about the waste and inefficiency thing, because that's
honestly,
another big lie.
People know I would do this for about 15 hours today.
Yeah. So if you think of Social Security like an insurance company, Social Security's overhead, until about 9 years ago, their overhead was 1.2% overhead per the amount of benefits they pay every year. That ratio of overhead to benefits paid, 1.2% when it operated well. That's now been reduced to less than 1%. But anyway, back to the comparison. If you compare that 1.2% when they operated well with a high level of customer service, that would make it the most efficient insurance company probably in the world. Allstate, the good hands people, they have an overhead of 19%. Liberty Mutual, Liberty Bibberty, they have an overhead of 23% overhead. So this notion that somehow Elon, in his genius Doge boys, and all of them that I see mentioned at Social Security or MEM, that they are going after all of this waste in this agency, they have not found the waste that they claim they found. What they want to do is get their hands on that 2.7 trillion in reserve. And so they have to wreck its reputation, wreck its customer service in order to turn enough people against the agency so that then they can get away with robbing it. But it is not an agency that has ever been bloated or wasteful. It's one of the most efficient insurance companies when it's operated well. And Congress will hopefully get them back to 1.2% if the Doge people and Trump don't wreck it before them.
I want to talk about that 2.7 trillion because I'm old enough to remember when Al Gore was talking about a lockbox, and everybody was sort of, well, I just remember the general response to that being like, "What's he talking about?" And I think we found out 5 or 6 years later when George Bush wanted to privatize it. But talk about the implication. Like there seems to be two different sort of like reasons outside of just general ideology that they feel this is socialism that Republicans go after this. One is because that's a big pool of money that could offset tax cuts for the rich. And then it's also a big pool of money that if Wall Street got their hands off of, could lard up with fees and whatnot. Talk about both those elements of why there's this sort of hunger to undermine Social Security.
Yeah, I don't entirely understand why why they're going after this agency as viciously as they are. I suppose a part of it could be ideology. We've heard Elon Musk say that he believes that empathy is the greatest weakness in the Western mind. Most Americans would not agree with that statement. Most Americans think that the greatness of our country is determined by the amount of care and concern we show and have and empathy we have for one another. And there is no act that's, in law that is more impactful and has been for generations than Social Security. So I suppose it's partly ideological. It was debated, I am told, back in 1983. And by the way, I was in, senior in high school or just a freshman in college. And all my friends and I would say to each other then, it's not going to be there for us. And here I am, 62, Sam, and now I can apply. So it was debated back then that, well, maybe we should take part of this surplus reserve that we're going to build up to cover the baby boomers, and maybe we should invest it in the market. And they debated that, and they decided, no, we don't want to invest it in the market. And it was, I'm told, that it was actually Republican congresspeople that did not want that amount of money being manipulated by politicians in the federal government, whoever the president of the United States might be, that would then, make politically driven investments with it. So they required that it all be put in the safest form of investment, which is treasury bonds, full faith and credit of the United States of America. I've served as a governor, and so I know that our own state pension systems, part of those do get invested in the market. Part of those also get invested in treasury bonds. But for Social Security, they're the only agency that actually runs a surplus. Far from adding to the national deficit, Social Security actually lends the federal government money in the form of buying those treasury bonds. And then every year, now that the baby boomers are passing through the retirement age, the difference between the money that comes in a given year and the money that has to go out to cover the baby boomers is taken as anticipated from that surplus reserve. Now, right around the same time, they started going after Social Security with all of these big lies about it, trying to undermine its reputation, its waste, its fraud, abuse, all of this horse hockey. President Trump signed an executive order asking his Treasury Secretary and his Commerce Secretary to come up with a plan for a sovereign wealth fund. And that sovereign wealth fund, if you read the executive order, and not many people did, is an effort by the sovereign. I think they meant sovereign in terms of the government rather than capital S, like the new king of America. It would be a fund, though, that would allow him to invest wherever he might like, with an account that is not necessarily something he has to go through Congress to get approval to invest and to spend. So, we can twist ourselves into pretzels wondering what their ultimate goal is, why they want their hands on that. You indicated, and some Congress people have said, yeah, they want it to make tax cuts for the very wealthy permanent, and they've got to find a big chunk of it in order to do that. That could be. I don't know. I don't know with assurance. I can't really say. I can say with some assurance, though, that they've probably taken 90% of the actions necessary to crater this agency and to interrupt benefits for the first time in 90 years. And it's that threat is very real. It's very current, and it's very present. And perhaps what they want to do is actually to precipitate an emergency, then declare a presidential emergency, and then maybe be able to get away with things that otherwise they'd have to get through Congress. I'm imagining now.
That doesn't seem terribly implausible, frankly. One last thing as we talk about this, and I should also say that, I remember in the wake of the financial crisis, there were a lot of states that had a lot of problems because their pension funds. I mean, this is Social Security, as you know, one leg of a three-legged stool, and those pension funds in a lot of states they got crushed because of the in the wake of the financial crisis.
True.
And in a lot of instances in the private sector, you see people anticipating certain amount of returns. It opens the door to putting less in. So if you got, the urgency to fund these things. I mean, if I was to, we put in the stock market, we're going to get 12% returns, and I say that we're getting 12%. Then all of a sudden, 30 years down the line, we have a huge shortfall. It's a great way to cut it. But one of the things I'm curious about, you've talked a lot about Elon Musk's assault here. The other sort of, tip of the spear in attacking these agencies, and it's almost as if we've seen, wave one hit the beach, and behind that is Russell Vogt and the Heritage Foundation and the Project 2025 folks. Doge, in some ways, it seems to me, slowed their roll and, created a lot of opportunity for legal challenges. Do you anticipate another wave of this, of these assaults, or is it just going to be ongoing? Have they put their people in place enough at the agency and around it so that this assault is sort of just going to be self-perpetuating, or do you anticipate anything coming from like the Russell Vote-nicks, if you will, going after Social Security?
They pretty much wiped out the senior executive service at Social Security. They took the 9 regions, and there were about 120 people in the senior executive service. They took the 9 regions, they consolidated those 9 regional headquarters from SSA down to just 4. And they've put a lot of political people in place. I mean, the agency's being entirely run by political people. And the CIO, who claims that they're going to be switching to a whole new system, that they're going to leave the COBOL system behind in the next 30 days. I think this is, and there's been litigation, and we usually, and usually the plaintiffs are prevailing. Like a federal judge ordered the Doge people to stay out of the database, but they really don't care. They know that the courts don't have an army, and they seem to just be they seem to be bringing on the constitutional challenge of a court ordering them to stop doing something in this case, and they just kind of say, "Well, make us." She said, "Stay out." She wanted the Doge people to stay out of the personal data that's there in the computer system at Social Security. And not only did they fail to get out, but they just gave people different titles within the agency in order to kind of play cutesy around the judge's order. And now, for the first time ever, they've actually been marking people as dead that they know to be alive inside the Social Security database. And Sam, that's a crime. It is a crime to knowingly falsify a federal record, especially one that other federal agencies, as well as private agencies, rely upon. And that's what they've done at least 6,000 times. I'm told they're going to go up to 10 million more, and they will claim it's just, they're just cleaning up records. But when I was at a town hall in Wisconsin recently, there were 2 women who raised their hands when this topic came up. And they said, I have a friend who was wrongly marked as dead. And I asked both of them, when did that happen? They said within the last 2 weeks. So they are mucking around and causing a lot of pain. And if they started off with those 6,000 saying that it was just repeat violent offenders, non-citizens. But those 10 million are a lot more than that. So I think this is going to be a grind, my friend. I don't think that they've slowed down one iota. I think they want to crater this agency. I think they want to precipitate an emergency so then they can do whatever their next step is. And that will involve somebody making money on on the pain that they inflict, and it's not going to be pretty. I think the one thing that can save us, though, there was an article yesterday that of all the many cruddy things that Donald Trump's done in his first 100 days, none is getting the blowback from the democracy, from the people, quite like Social Security. It was the number one polling negative, and I do believe that the White House has noticed that.
And that really is, I mean, all that we can do at this point is just let the people understand the dynamics at play, and if something goes really, really sideways, and as service deteriorates, the people understand why.
Yes, and I think they are. I mean, the people are going to have to save us on this one. I mean, at some of these town halls, it's interesting. The people get very angry that the Republican members of Congress don't come to the town halls, and then and sometimes they get angry with the Democrats for not putting a halt to all of this stuff by next Thursday. But as Emmanuel Cleaver pointed out, I was at a town hall for him and Congressman from Kansas City, and he asked the audience as they were expressing their frustration, "Why can't you stop this right now? Where's the institutional safeguard?" He said, "This is a people moment." He said, you know how many Congress people stood with Martin Luther King on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial on the March on Washington? Not one. There's a lot of Congress people. Hakeem Jeffries has told all his members to go back home, hold town halls on Social Security. But this is a people moment, and people need to call their Congress people, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, they're senators, Democrats, Republicans, and they need to call the White House, because what our members need to see is a rising level, not a blip, but a constantly rising level of people that are rightly outraged and concerned that they've had their customer service for Social Security that they have paid in for their whole lives cut so badly and messed with so badly that they can't access their benefits. People paid for their customer service at the same time that they paid for their benefits. And right now, Elon Musk and Donald Trump are cutting that service, and there's no good reason for it.
Commissioner Martin O'Malley, former Social Security commissioner, also former governor of Maryland and mayor of Baltimore, and one of the people I think could have won the 2016 election against Donald Trump.
Thank you. We would have beat him, Sam. We would have beat him.
I've been saying that for about 8 years. Really appreciate your coming on today, and good luck with it. And I appreciate the work you're doing and holding these town halls and letting people know this stuff.
Hey, thank you, Sam. Great spending some time with you. Thanks for your interest in this. It's important. Hey, can I say one other thing?
Sure.
Younger people, if they liquidate this and turn this into a Ponzi scheme, you're the ones that lose, because the people currently getting benefits, they're getting the benefits. But if you've been paying in for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, kiss that goodbye if they liquidate it. So young people, you're the ones that they're about to rip off. Don't let them. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.